I remember the exact moment my life changed. Not because it was dramatic, because it wasn't. It was casual. Like it meant nothing. It happened during Sunday dinner, the kind we always had at my parents' house. I was juggling bowls of mashed potatoes and gravy when Mom, without even looking up, said, "Oh, Liv, you'll need to start clearing out your room this week." I blinked. Why? Dad didn't look up from carving the roast. Mom answered as if we were discussing the weather. "Your brother and Kayla need it for the baby. They're starting renovations next weekend." The room went quiet, except for the clink of forks on plates. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. "Wait," I said slowly. "You're giving them my room? Where am I supposed to go?" She gave me that soft, patronizing smile she used when I was a kid. "You're 26, Olivia. You're old enough to make sacrifices for family. That's what sisters do." I looked around. Dad kept cutting meat, pretending not to hear. Josh shrugged. Kayla rubbed her belly like royalty. "You expect me to move out? Just like that?" My voice cracked. Josh sighed. "It's not a big deal, Liv. We just need the space. You can crash on the couch for a while." Crash on the couch, in my own home. I had stayed for years. After college, when everyone else moved, out I stayed. When Dad got sick and needed rides to appointments, I was there. When Mom needed help with bills, I picked up extra shifts. And now, I was disposable. I excused myself before the tears could show, locked myself in my room, stared at the walls I had painted, at the shelves filled with my books, my photos, my life. That night, Mom knocked gently. "Sweetheart, don't make this difficult. It's not forever, just until they settle in." "How long is that?" I asked through the door. "As long as it takes," she said. "Family comes first. Family comes first, as long as you're not me." I packed what I could into my car. Clothes, laptop, a few personal things. No one noticed me leave. Laughter echoed from the living room as I stepped into the cold. I drove aimlessly through neighborhoods I couldn't afford. The truth? I had nothing saved. I'd spent years helping them. When exhaustion hit, I parked in an empty lot and leaned my seat back. It was my first night sleeping in a car, while my family slept comfortably, thinking they'd done nothing wrong. The next morning, I went back to get the rest of my things. My old door was wide open. Josh and Kayla were already measuring walls. Kayla beamed. "Oh, good, you're here. Can you help us move some stuff? We want to start today." I froze. Mom appeared behind me. "Liv, don't be selfish. This is for the baby. You'll understand one day when you have children." But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. I turned around, walked out, and never looked back. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when Dad got worse. They called. I ignored. Texted. I left them unread. The longer I stayed away, the more I realized they'd made their choice. Josh and Kayla were the priority. I was just extra. Years passed. Then one day I woke up to 46 missed calls from Mom and one text from Josh. "Please, Liv. We need you." But after everything, the question wasn't why they were calling. It was whether I would answer at all. The first year was the hardest. I slept in my car for nearly 3 weeks. Parking lots, gas stations, a friend's driveway if they didn't ask questions. Shame clung to me like a second skin. I didn't tell anyone how bad it got. Eventually, I found a tiny room for rent above a bakery. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, the heat barely worked. But it was mine. I picked up a second job at a coffee shop. It wasn't much, but it kept me going. Nights were spent hunched over a laptop, scouring job boards for something, anything better. Months passed. The calls stopped. No one came looking. No one said sorry. It was like I had been erased. But life went on. In the second year, I got a job as an admin assistant at a small marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I cooked cheap meals, skipped every luxury. I learned to fix leaky faucets and mend. Second-hand clothes. I saved every cent I could. Year 3, I got promoted. Then again. Slowly, the cracks began to fill. My tiny room became a modest apartment. I got health insurance, a retirement account, all the things my parents once told. Me, I'd never manage without them. I didn't just survive, I grew. While Josh and Kayla painted nurseries and threw baby showers, I was attending night classes, working toward a business certification. It was exhausting, but it made me stronger. By year 5, I was leading projects, managing a team, earning enough to breathe again. My apartment was small but warm. Secondhand furniture I'd restored. Framed photos of new friends. Proof that I'd built something, on my own. I didn't hear much from home. Now and then, someone would mention my family. Photos of Josh's kids on social media. I never looked. I couldn't afford to care. That didn't mean it didn't. Hurt. Every birthday. Every holiday. I waited. Maybe this time they'd reach out. Really reach out. Not a stiff, happy holidays text. Not a guilt-laced voicemail, but something real. Something that said, we were wrong. It never came. They never did. By 7/16, it became obvious they weren't just busy. By 7/19, I knew I had been replaced. So I moved on. I built a quiet, simple life. I started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring girls who reminded me too much of myself at that age, eager to please, always sacrificing, always putting themselves last. I poured into them the love and wisdom I had once craved from my own family. By year 7, I was proud of who I had become. Then, out of nowhere, they found me. It was a rainy Thursday morning when I saw it. 46 missed calls stacked on my lock screen. Mom, Josh, Kayla, even Dad, who hadn't called me in years. Their texts were frantic. Please call us. We need you. It's about Dad. It's serious. Olivia, please come home. Home. As if that place could still be called that. I stared at my phone for a long time, heart pounding. Part of me, the part that still longed for family, for belonging, wanted to respond immediately. But the other part, the part that had learned the hard way what their love really meant, hesitated. What could they possibly want from me after all this time? They hadn't needed me when they took my room, when they left me out in the cold, when I was sleeping in a freezing car. But now they needed me? I turned my phone over, face down on the kitchen table. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure what to do. The Olivia they remembered might have come running, but I wasn't her anymore. I didn't answer them, not right away. In fact, I didn't answer at all. I spent the next 2 days going through the motions of my life, making coffee, attending meetings, walking through the park after work. But those 46 missed calls haunted me. Every glance at my phone felt like a weight pressing deeper into my chest. Finally, on the 3rd night, curiosity won. I called Mom's number, fully expecting it to go to voicemail, but she picked up on the first ring. Olivia? Olivia, is that you? She gasped, like I was some long-lost child instead of the daughter she had practically discarded. My stomach turned. What's going on? I asked. Her voice cracked. It's your father. He's sick. Really sick. I stayed silent, unsure whether to feel concerned or just numb. He had a stroke 2 weeks ago, she continued. He's not recovering well. He's confused most of the time. Josh and Kayla have been handling everything, but... Her voice faltered. We need you. Those words hung in the air like a bad smell. You need me? I asked, bitterness slipping out before I could stop it. There was a pause. Olivia, please don't be like this, she said quietly. We're family. We need to come together. The audacity. I thought about all those nights I'd spent shivering in the car, wondering why my family hadn't needed me then. Still, I asked, why now? You made it very clear I wasn't part of the family anymore, I said. When you gave my room away, like it meant nothing. Mom's breath hitched. It was never about that. We were under pressure, with the baby coming, and you're strong. We thought you'd land on your feet. We didn't know it was that hard for you. I clenched my jaw. That hard. Like I hadn't been sleeping in parking lots. Before I could respond, she whispered, Josh and Kayla moved into their own place last year. The house is empty now. We could really use your help. And there it was. Not just about Dad. The house. Their house. Too much for them now. They needed a caregiver. A replacement. A daughter again. But only because they were desperate. They hadn't even asked if I was willing. It was just assumed. Like always. I didn't give her an answer. I told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up. The next day, Josh called. Unlike Mom, he didn't bother with pleasantries. Look, Liv, Dad needs help. We all do. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I almost laughed. Harder than it has to be? You know, I said, keeping my voice steady. I never got an apology. Josh sighed. That was years ago. We were all under a lot of stress. You've had time to move on. But I hadn't. Not fully. Because I was never given the chance. They had moved on the moment I drove away. And now they expected me to do what I'd always done. Quietly. Step in, clean up the mess, and put my life on hold. That night, I drove to the old neighborhood. I parked outside the house I used to call home, watched from a distance. Dim lights flickered behind the curtains. The paint was peeling, the yard overgrown. The place that once seemed so full of life looked hollow. Mom sat on the front porch wrapped in a shawl, staring at the street. For a brief second, I almost pitied her. But then I remembered that cold night I left. Packed my life into my car and drove away without a backward glance. Because no one had cared enough to stop me. And here's the thing. I had built something. Maybe it wasn't a big house or a picture-perfect family. But it was mine. I had friends who respected me. A job I loved. A quiet, stable life. Far from their manipulations. As I watched Mom sit there, unaware I was watching, I realized something. They weren't looking for me because they missed me. They were looking for me because they needed me to sacrifice, to save, to smooth things over, and I wasn't sure if I would. I told myself I was just going for closure. That's the lie I clung to as I drove down those familiar streets, watching the town I once called home pass by like scenery in someone else's story. I hadn't been back in almost 8 years. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not for anything. But now, with my father's health in question and my phone still buzzing, I wasn't sure what came next. But for the first time in a long time, I knew it was going to be my choice. Every few hours, the missed calls stacked up. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the same one I used to bike up as a child, I felt like I'd aged a decade. Up close, the house looked worse than I remembered. The paint had peeled away even more. The once neat garden was a tangle of weeds, and the porch sagged to one side like it had given up trying to stand tall. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to put the car in reverse and disappear, but I didn't. I rang the doorbell. Mom opened the door. For a split second, relief flickered across her face. "Oh, Olivia," she breathed, pulling me into a hug before I could stop her. I stood stiff in her arms, unsure whether to return it. Inside, the house felt colder than I remembered. The walls were bare where family photos used to hang. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon, Mom's signature, was gone. It felt less like home and more like a stranger's house. Dad was sunken into his recliner in the living room, looking smaller somehow. He barely noticed me at first. When his eyes finally met mine, they were cloudy, confused. "Liv?" he rasped. I nodded silently, unprepared for how fragile he looked. I'd braced for anger, guilt, resentment, anything but this. Mom offered tea like we were just catching up. "Sit. I'll make us something warm." I sat on the edge of the couch. Josh and Kayla emerged from the kitchen. Kayla looked tired, her hair thrown up hastily. Josh, of course, looked unchanged, entitled, and too comfortable. "Glad you finally showed up," he said, arms crossed like I'd missed a scheduled appointment. Kayla nudged him. "Josh," I said, staring. "I wasn't sure I'd come at all." He shrugged. "We thought you'd want to help. Dad's struggling." Kayla's eyes flicked toward Mom, some silent communication I couldn't decode. They danced around the real reason they'd called, talked about Dad's declining health, how hard it had been, how exhausted they were. "How long has it been like this?" I asked. Josh shifted. "A couple years. 2 years. They'd known he was getting worse for 2 whole years, and only now thought to call me." Mom set down her cup. "We've done our best. But your father needs round-the-clock care, and Josh and Kayla have their kids, their jobs. It's just too much." I stared. The realization hit. "You want me to move back?" I said flatly. No one answered. "You want me to take care of Dad, quit my job, uproot my life, slide back into the space you left open for me years ago when you tossed me out?" "Olivia, don't make it sound like that," Mom said, voice trembling. "This is about family, about doing the right thing." I leaned back into the worn couch, letting the silence stretch. "You never even asked if I was okay," I said. "Not when I left, not when I was living out of my car that first winter, not when I vanished. I wasn't family then, but now that you need someone to clean up the mess, now I'm family again." Josh threw his hands up. "You're obviously still holding a grudge." "A grudge?" I echoed, my voice sharp. "I sacrificed years of my life for this family. I stayed. I gave everything. And you gave me nothing in return." The room went silent. Kayla finally whispered, "We didn't know it was that bad." I stood. "You didn't care enough to find out." Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. "Please, Olivia, you're the only one who can help." I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the disposable daughter, the afterthought. "I've built a life you can't begin to understand," I said. "You'll get by. You always do, when it benefits you." And I left. It was never about Dad. The phone calls didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. I tried to ignore them. But a small part of me, the part that still wondered if maybe they'd changed, read every word. Then, one evening, buried between the "please come home" and "we need you," came something different. "It's about the house. Please, Olivia, call us." I shouldn't have gone back, but I needed to hear it from them. When I arrived, Mom looked at me like I was a soldier returned from war. Josh and Kayla sat at the kitchen table, eyes bloodshot, papers spread out. "We're going to lose the house," Mom said. I blinked. "What? Your father's medical? Bills." She rubbed her temples. "We took out a second mortgage. Josh tried to help, but it's not enough." Josh added, "We thought once Dad got better, things would stabilize, but—" "So you want me to bail you out?" I said. "No," Mom flinched. "We just thought, maybe with the money you've saved, we could keep the house. We'd pay you back." There it was. Not about Dad, not about family, about the house. The same house they kicked me out of, the same house where Josh and Kayla measured my bedroom for a nursery. Kayla sniffled. "We're desperate. The kids need this place. We put everything into remodeling it." The baby's not a baby anymore, I said coldly. You remodeled my room, and now you want me to save the house you pushed me out of? Josh gritted his teeth. It was years ago. Don't be petty. Petty? I snapped. I slept in my car while you painted the nursery, Mom cried. We made mistakes, Liv, but the kids deserve to grow up here. I stayed calm, detached. You had years to reach out, I said, but you only did when you needed something. Josh leaned forward. Olivia, we could lose everything. No, I said. You already did. I wasn't angry. I was done. A few days passed. Silence. Then, on Sunday afternoon, I came home to find an envelope under my door. No return address, just my name, in Mom's handwriting. Inside, a letter. No apology, just desperation masked as sentiment. Your father's condition is worse. He doesn't have much time. Please help us keep the house. The kids need it. We need it. The house. Always the house. Not I'm sorry we left you. Not we miss you. Just we need you. I thought about all the birthdays I spent alone, the nights in my car, the life I built from scratch, and the next morning, I drove back, not to save them, but to end it. When I walked in, their eyes lit up. I'm here, I said, steady. But I didn't come to save you. Mom blinked. What? I came to give you closure, just like you gave me 8 years ago. Josh scowled. Don't be dramatic. You think this is dramatic? I raised an eyebrow. You barely acknowledged me for years. Now you want me to pretend it didn't happen? Kayla whispered. We're desperate. You've been desperate, I said. You just hoped I still was too. I pulled a small envelope from my coat pocket. Mom's eyes widened, probably expecting a check. It wasn't. It was a letter to my lawyer, formally declining any claim to the house or inheritance. I don't want it, I said. I want nothing from you. Josh gaped. You're walking away? After everything? After everything, I said. And I'm not angry. I'm just done. Mom's lips trembled. You'll come. Back for the funeral? For your father? If I do, I said, it won't be for you. I looked around the house one last time. The faded photos, the cracks in the walls, the ghosts of a family that chose convenience over love. I feel nothing, I said, and I walked out. 1 year later, I stood behind the counter of my small shop, the one I opened with the savings they thought I'd spend on their collapsing legacy. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Framed behind the counter was Mom's last letter. Next to it, a photo of me and the girls from the youth center, laughing during a workshop. I'd built something better than what they ever offered. I had a community. I had peace. I had me. Through others, I heard the house was lost. Josh and Kayla moved into a rental. Mom struggled with debt. Dad passed away quietly a few months later. I didn't go back. Not out of spite, because I had already buried everything I needed to. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't anger. It's choosing not to be who they expect. They expected me to come running. I didn't, and I never will.